Hello everyone, welcome back to another E-Deck Rankings video special. I'm Lumen, I'm here with Riley, also known as Graey.
Oh.
And yeah, what have we got here? We've got the minor improvements. We didn't assign them to each other this time.
You want to just alternate?
Okay, yeah, sure. So our number 10, minor improvement in the E-Deck, and we did have to call this down too, but we're just not going to include the honorable mentions this time. Our number 10 minor improvement is the Iron Oven. The Iron Oven is one of my favorites. I really like baking plans, and this is one of the 2 minor improvement ovens that is going to be a new thing for some of you Revised Edition only players that Original Edition had a few of, but having an oven as a minor improvement, we know how much we like bake actions in our minor improvements to help with baking strats, and Iron Oven is definitely no exception. Not only does it give you bake actions, it gives you great bake actions. That 1 grain to 6 food is something you don't really see outside of this card. And even though its cost is pretty steep at 3 stone, and it gives you fewer points than the stone oven for that 3 stone, I think that does not affect me seeing it as an amazing minor improvement.
Yeah, there's a lot of abilities that having this minor oven give you that just make it an incredible card to have in your arsenal if you have a baking strategy. Again, 6 food is really amazing. It means you need a lot less grain to feed yourself for the game if you're relying on baking, or if you just have a game where you only have a couple grain but need to get through 1 harvest. The fact that you're getting 6 food for that 1 grain just ends up being really amazing. And then one of the things with these minor ovens that should not be underrated is the fact that they are in your hand and you are the only one that can play them. So plenty of people, I'm sure, myself included, have had those games where you have this incredible bake strategy. Everything's going great, you've sown multiple grain fields, you're growing, and then all of a sudden somebody, maybe sometimes a weak player in a game, and you get pretty mad, just buys that oven and your game is ruined. If you have the Iron Oven, you know nobody's buying that oven out from under you, and so that's a lot of assurance to have in your strategy. You get to play this card when you want, when it's best for you, you don't have to rush it out, and then ends up being very powerful, in addition to it just being an incredible grain conversion. And then in Revised, we often see those games where stone is just not that valuable. And so 3 stone, while it is a high cost, it's definitely not an absurd cost. It's very reasonable to meet this card, especially when the payoff is this high.
Yeah, and I think it's a little underrated to have 3 stone being the only type of resource as the cost.
Yeah, you'll see plenty of games where that 1 clay on the stone oven ends up being pretty awkward. With clay, you can't use extra clay super efficiently, so if you only need 1 more clay for the rest of the game for that stone oven, a lot of the time that's an entire action just to get that stone oven. And you'll take like a 4 clay pile and then just have 3 clay at the end of the game, 3 clay left at the end of the game. And so the fact that you just never need to worry about that, you just have to ensure you get that stone and you got the oven, ends up being a lot more powerful than stressing about 1 clay that can be very awkward to get.
Yeah.
The next card we've talked about, or we will talk about, is Muddy Waters. And when you look at this card, you may think, oh, that's nice, I'm always going to draft that. But people really underrate the things they get from this card. Even if it's a trickle of clay and food, even if it's a long period of time to get all that clay and food, there's no cost to this. You're not spending resources, you just have to play the minor a lot of the time on start player for growth or on growth itself, and you're getting a trickle of food and clay throughout the game. Like we said in the last card, sometimes that 1 or 2 clay can make all the difference. It can mean that Reno without having to take a clay action. It can mean that stone oven without having to take a clay action. And so even if it's not a huge amount of clay, a little bit of clay can be very powerful. And then it's hard to emphasize enough how how good a free point is. We don't see a ton of free points in Revised. Some cards that used to be free, like Duck Pond, now Forest
Strawberry
Pond.
Hut.
Yeah, these are cards that in original were just free points, and they were too strong. So Uwe added costs to them, but not so with Muddy Waters. You just get a point, and points are good.
Yeah, these cards have not been handled too heavily by Uwe.
Yeah, and this is a card that in the old version on Play Agricola, you constantly saw it going late because people want their cards to be flashy and they want them to do exciting things.
I want to say the average draft pick of this card was like 3 pretty often, even though I think it's really psychological what that clay does interfering with the food, because if you replace the clay with a food, I think the card looks a lot better in some people's minds.
Yeah, I mean, people have a lot more to compare it to. They're like, oh, that's just food. It's always going to be good. And people will look at the card and think, oh, I don't know what to do with that clay, and that's not as good. But it's just a really solid card. And you may see it forth and be like, oh, it's just a whatever card. I want a flashy card. But a lot of the time you'll see that the person who takes Muddy Waters is the person who wins that game. So you should be that person.
You should. The next card, number 8, is Upholstery. And this is a card that in the original Agricola was just okay. Like, sometimes it would do great, and other times it's just like a point. But we think in Revised Edition, with so many ways to inject read into the game, and the side effects, or like continuing effects of having extra read, meaning there's extra rooms that you might build, we think Upholstery really has a high potential in Revised.
The combination of more read, higher one for points, really makes this card, we think, again, we don't know, but we think this card is going to be very strong in Revised. There's some cards that inject such a high amount of read, obviously Forest Reviewer, and cards like it, Water Worker.
Outskirts Director.
Yeah, cards that just add read to the game. Being able to turn that read into something, anything at all, is nice. Being able to turn that into points is very powerful. And so this card, I think, is going to be definitely one to look out for in Revised.
Yeah, I mean, an interesting comparison I just thought of, actually. Given that Upholstery is completely free, with no prerequisites, feed pellets in Revised, how good are free miners that just give you free stuff? And like a free read to point conversion every so often, compared to like a free sheep, and then once in a while you turn a veg to a cow or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually kind of comparable in terms of you like super free cards that do something. And Upholstery, I think, falls into that category.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where you need some extra stone for a reno or for an improvement, so you're forced to take reed stone food. Or even more often, I would say, there's times where you need a few reed for a room, and it's late in the game, so there's a 3 reed pile available, and you have nothing to do with that extra reed. Upholstery means you'll always have somewhere to send that reed, even in normal games. And then again, there's some games where this card's just going to be completely bonkers.
Yep, absolutely.
The next card is Oxgoat, which is a miner that it's a plow support card, but it's more powerful than simply giving you another space to plow on, such as a card like Forest Plow,
right,
or cards in that ilk. But Oxgoat, I think, is a step above cards like that in a lot of games, because it's more than just getting a plow. You're getting, if you have a hearth, a plow and 2 food, or there's plenty of times where you're getting a plow and a cow, and that cow can be 2 points. And so Oxgoat is extremely powerful, in addition to having a point on it, which is definitely relevant because none of the other plows have points on them.
Steam plow.
Sure. But most of the other plows are not going to have that free point, and there's plenty of cards that a wood for a point on a miner is already like a solid baseline. And so the fact that you're getting a very powerful plow effect on top of that, I think makes Oxgoat one of the premium cards to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one also in the category of cow bullying cards, Wooden Way Bucket being another one.
Yeah.
Oh god, Woodway Bucket with this card is just amazing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of cards that really makes Oxgoat incredible. Pet Lover is going to be a card to look out for. The ever underrated, continually underrated by both of the people sitting in front of you.
Yep.
As well as some new cards. I don't remember the name of the card, but there's a card that gives you some wood when you take animals. And so plenty of situations where taking one cow is going to be more than just one cow.
Yep.
And then there's other situations where blocking the cow space can be very powerful. You're obviously stopping people from getting a breeding pair of cows in one action, which can be make or break for some games if they have a card like Champion Breeder, or even if it's
Milking
just
Stool.
yeah, or even if it's just a 3-room game where they want to be able to take those efficient breeding pair actions. You get to shut all that down, and you're still taking a very good action for yourself.
Yep. Our number 6 card is possibly the first 4 occupation prerequisite card you've ever seen if you're a revised edition player, and it's the Apiary. This lets you sow a field every round, and it doesn't have any cost aside from needing 4 occupation prerequisite. It doesn't have a point on it. In a lot of ways, it doesn't look very flashy, but a lot of the hidden, or at least maybe it looks hidden at first, strength of this card is that it works both rounds in all the mid-game stages.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you get a free 2-field sow every stage. I think looking at the effects of Apiary in the aggregate is the real way to start understanding how good this card is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things about Apiary once you've played it a few times, or in our case, tons of times, that really just makes Apiary incredible. For example, the fact that you can sow fields and then later plow and sow again. So if you only have one field to sow and you sow it in round 10, and then you plow and you get another sow in round 11 without having all that pressure on the sow bake space. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. And then on its own, it's just a very powerful engine to be able to sow for free. I mean, the biggest thing about Apiary, I think, is the fact that the crops are spread out means you get to harvest those crops and then re-sow them. And so with just Apiary, you can score full crop points just by sowing a grain in, say, stage 3, or sowing a grain and a veggie in rounds 8 and 9. They come up, you plow a couple more times, you'll re-sow them, you plow a couple more times, or I guess just your 5th field, and you'll be able to re-sow them later. And just one card can be a crop engine on its own. And
yeah, auto farming is what some people call it, and it's a fun phrase to use.
For
Apiary
sure.
is definitely an auto farm card.
And then there's other situations where you get some really solid crop strategies where Apiary is absolutely incredible. Cards that we've seen, like Scythe Worker, and some upcoming cards like Scythe, which allows you to clear an entire field every harvest. Cards like that make the repeated sow really, really above the pack in terms of other effects like this.
Yep. Very fun, and yeah, don't hesitate to try it. I don't think too many of you will hesitate to try a 4-oc prereq minor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Be on the lookout for it, and you can rush it out. You can play your Ox super aggressively to get this in stage 2, but Apiary is a very solid card if you're not playing it until stage 4, in like round 10 or 11. It still will give you a very positive effect.
Absolutely. Yeah, good call on that. So that's our minor improvements of the E-Deck, ranks 10 through 6. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with our rankings. And stay tuned for the last video of this series where we talk about our 5 favorite minors from the E-Deck.
Mm-hmm.
See you next time.